Two of the largest passenger aircraft ever built are sitting on the ground at an airport too small to hold them. A thick wall of fog is rolling in from the hills, slowly swallowing the runway whole. Nobody on either plane knows the other exists. In a few minutes, 583 people will be dead. This is the story of the worst aviation accident to have ever happened, and why it should never have happened at all. This is the story of the Tenerife Airport Disaster.
You are watching Veil.
It is the 27th of March, 1977. A Sunday, the kind of day that feels ordinary from the outside. Families at airports, luggage on carousels, the low hum of engines and announcements echoing through terminal halls. Across Europe, thousands of people are doing what people do on Sundays in late March. Traveling, returning home, beginning holidays they have been planning for months. At Amsterdam Airport Schiphol, 234 passengers are boarding a Boeing 747. The aircraft is named the Rhine. It is one of the most capable aircraft in the world, a wide-body jumbo jet that carries its passengers in a kind of effortless, pressurized calm 35,000 feet above the earth. Today, it is operating as KLM Royal Dutch Airlines Flight 4805, bound for Gran Canaria in the Canary Islands. A charter flight, mostly tourists, people heading for the sun. At the front of that aircraft, in the left-hand seat of the cockpit, sits Captain Jacob Veldhuizen van Zanten. He is not just any captain. Van Zanten is the most decorated, most respected pilot in the KLM fleet. He is 50 years old. He has logged tens of thousands of hours in the air. He is the chief flying instructor for the entire airline, the man responsible for training every other KLM pilot who climbs into a 747 cockpit. His face appears in KLM's own advertising. He is, by any measure, the finest pilot the airline has. This matters. It will matter enormously before the day is done. His first officer is Klaas Meurs, 42 years old. His flight engineer is Willem Schroeder. They are experienced, professional, and operating under a captain whose authority none of them would dream of questioning. The flight from Amsterdam to Gran Canaria is completely uneventful. 4 hours across the continent and out over the Atlantic. The sky is clear, the aircraft performs perfectly, the passengers eat their meals and read their newspapers and look out the windows at the ocean below and think about nothing in particular. Somewhere over the Atlantic, on another flight path, a Pan-American Boeing 747 is also making its way toward Gran Canaria. Pan Am Flight 1736 has come a long way. It departed Los Angeles the previous day, stopped at New York JFK to collect more passengers, and is now carrying 380 people, most of them American tourists booked on a Mediterranean cruise. The ship is waiting for them at Gran Canaria. From there, they will sail to Lisbon, Casablanca, the Greek islands. It is the kind of trip people save for, the kind of trip people talk about for years afterward. In the left seat of the Pan Am cockpit sits Captain Victor Grubbs, experienced, methodical, well-regarded. Beside him is First Officer Robert Bragg. Behind them, flight engineer George Warnes, a solid crew on a routine flight. Neither aircraft has any reason to think this day will be anything other than what it appears to be. At 13:15 local time, Gran Canaria Airport ceases to exist as a destination. A bomb explodes inside the terminal building at Las Palmas Airport. The device has been planted by a Canarian separatist group, a political organization that has been operating in the islands for years, agitating for independence from Spain. The explosion tears through the flower shop inside the terminal. Several people are injured. The damage is significant, but what changes everything is what comes next. A phone call is received by Spanish authorities warning that a second device has been planted somewhere in the airport. The terminal is evacuated. Las Palmas Airport is closed immediately. Every aircraft in the vicinity that was bound for Gran Canaria is told the same thing. You cannot land here. Find somewhere else. Dozens of aircraft begin diverting. The closest alternative is Los Rodeos Airport on the neighboring island of Tenerife. It is a small airport, a regional airport. It sits at an elevation of over 2,000 feet in the hills above Santa Cruz, where weather systems behave differently than they do at sea level. Fog rolls in without warning. Clouds move through the airport itself, not above it. It is not designed to handle what is about to arrive. Aircraft begin stacking up on the ground at Los Rodeos. The taxiways fill, the apron fills. Planes that have nowhere to park are directed to stand on the main taxiway itself, the parallel strip that runs beside the runway, blocking it entirely. The small control tower, staffed for a quiet Sunday afternoon at a regional airport, is suddenly managing more traffic than it has likely ever seen. KLM 4805 lands at Los Rodeos at 13:38. Pan Am 1736 lands shortly after. Both crews are told the same thing. Las Palmas is still closed. The passengers disembark to stretch their legs. The terminal is small and quickly overwhelmed. People mill around, children grow restless. The hours begin to pass. Van Zanten makes a decision. While the aircraft is on the ground, he orders the KLM 747 to be refueled fully. He wants to take on as much fuel as possible so that when Las Palmas reopens, they can land, disembark their passengers, and fly straight back to Amsterdam without stopping again. It is a logical decision from a scheduling perspective. KLM has recently introduced strict new duty time regulations, rules that limit how many hours a crew can work before they are legally required to rest. Van Zanten is watching the clock. He does not want to be stranded in Gran Canaria overnight waiting for his crew's rest period to expire. The fueling takes time, significant time. This decision, this entirely reasonable, entirely professional, entirely logical decision, will cost everyone on the runway their lives. While KLM refuels, the Pan Am crew sits and waits. Captain Grubbs has asked the tower repeatedly whether they can simply fly to Las Palmas and hold in an orbit above the airport until it reopens. The tower says no, they are to wait at Tenerife like everyone else. Grubbs is frustrated. His aircraft does not need fuel. His crew is ready. There is no reason for them to still be sitting on this small island on a Sunday afternoon, but the system is what it is, so they wait. Las Palmas Airport reopens in the late afternoon. The rush to depart begins, but now there is a problem that nobody had fully considered. Los Rodeos has only one runway and one parallel taxiway. The taxiway is blocked by parked aircraft. In order to get into position for takeoff, every aircraft waiting on the ground has to taxi down the active runway itself, travel to the far end, and turn around. One by one, in sequence, in the fog that has now begun to pour across the airfield. The fog is thickening by the minute. By late afternoon, Los Rodeos is disappearing. The cloud moves in from the hills surrounding the airport in slow, dense walls. Visibility drops, then drops again. From the control tower, the controllers can no longer see the runway. From the runway, the pilots cannot see the tower. From one end of the airfield, the other end simply does not exist. This is not unusual for Los Rodeos. It sits in a particular geography that makes it prone to exactly this kind of rapid deterioration. The crews know it, the controllers know it, but knowing it and being able to do anything about it are different things. The airport has no ground radar, no way to track the precise position of aircraft on the surface. The controllers are working entirely from radio communications and their own mental picture of where each aircraft should be. It is 16:58. KLM 4805 is instructed to taxi down the runway, turn around at the far end, and hold in position awaiting takeoff clearance. Van Zanten acknowledges and begins to move. Pan Am 1736 is instructed to follow KLM down the same runway, then exit at taxiway C3 and hold there, clear of the runway, while KLM departs. Simple enough, in theory, but in the fog, nothing is simple. The taxiway designations at Los Rodeos are confusing. The exits are not well marked. Captain Grubbs and his crew peer into the gray as they taxi slowly down the runway behind the KLM aircraft aircraft they cannot see, searching for the turnoff they have been assigned. Taxiway C1 appears. It is angled too sharply, a near 135-degree turn that the 747 cannot make without risk of running off the edge. They pass it. Taxiway C2. The same problem. They are looking for C3. They continue slowly down the runway. They do not yet know that C3, in the fog, will look almost identical to C4. They do not yet know that this confusion will keep them on the runway for just long enough. At the far end of the runway, KLM 4805 completes its turn and sits in position, engines running, pointed down the runway into the fog. Van Zanten is ready. He has been waiting for hours. His duty clock is running. His passengers want to go home. He wants to go home. He watches the fog. He watches the clock. He begins to move the throttles forward. At 17:05, First Officer Muirs calls the tower. The KLM 4805 is now ready for takeoff, and we are waiting for our ATC clearance. The tower responds with a route clearance. This is an instruction describing the path the aircraft will fly after it is airborne, which heading to take, which altitude to climb to, which radio beacon to navigate toward. It is not takeoff clearance. It is not permission to go. It is simply the pre-planned route to be followed once airborne, communicated in advance. Van Zanten either does not hear this distinction or does not process it. In his mind, after hours of waiting, of watching his clock, of sitting at the end of a runway with his engines running, he hears what he expects to hear. He hears clearance to go. Muir begins reading back the route instructions to the tower. As he does, something unprecedented happens. While his first officer is still transmitting, Van Zanten releases the brakes and pushes the throttles forward. The 747 begins to move. Muirs, mid-sentence, mid-transmission, feels the aircraft accelerate beneath him. He adds 4 words to the end of his readback, almost as an announcement, almost as a statement of fact rather than a request. We are now at takeoff. In the tower, the controller hears this phrase and feels a pulse of alarm. He does not know if the KLM captain means he is in position and ready or that he is actually rolling. He responds immediately. Okay, stand by for takeoff. I will call you. At the same moment, the Pan Am crew, who have been monitoring the radio throughout, hear Muirs' words and understand immediately what they mean. Captain Grubbs keys his radio. No, we are still taxiing down the runway, the Clipper 1736. 2 transmissions, simultaneously. The towers, stand by. Pan Am's, we are still on the runway. Both reach the KLM cockpit at exactly the same moment. They overlap. They combine into a single shrill, squealing noise that lasts for nearly 4 seconds. Van Zanten hears nothing intelligible. The 747 continues to accelerate. In the fog, 1,500 meters down the same runway, Pan Am 1736 is still moving slowly, still searching for taxiway C3, still completely unaware that the aircraft they cannot see is now bearing down on them at increasing speed. The tower, concerned, calls Pan Am. Papa Alpha 1736, report when runway clear. Grubbs responds, okay, we'll report when we're clear. On the KLM flight deck, the flight engineer hears this exchange. Something in his chest tightens. He turns to Van Zanten. Is he not clear, that Pan American? Van Zanten doesn't answer immediately. The engineer asks again. Van Zanten says, oh yes. He says it with certainty. He says it with the absolute conviction of a man who has decided and who will not be second-guessed. He says it the way only the most senior, most decorated, most unquestionable pilot at KLM can say something, and so the engineer says nothing more. The 747 is now moving fast, very fast. The engines are at full takeoff power. The runway is disappearing beneath them. The fog swirls in the landing lights, close and white and absolute. Van Zanten stares ahead into nothing. Then, a shape. In the fog, at the very limit of what the landing lights can reach, something is there. Something large and dark and solid in the middle of the runway. It is the Pan Am 747. Captain Grubbs sees the lights at the same moment. blinding, white, approaching at impossible speed from out of the fog. "There he is. Look at him. God damn, that son of a bitch is coming." First Officer Bragg screams, "Get off, get off, get off." Grubbs wrenches the throttles to full power and tries to turn off the runway. The 747 begins to swing left, agonizingly slowly, the way that only a fully loaded jumbo jet can move, massive and resistant and subject to its own terrible momentum. At the same moment, Van Zanten pulls back on the controls with everything he has. The nose of the KLM 747 rises. The main gear lifts off the runway surface. For one impossible moment, the aircraft is airborne. It is not enough. The belly of the KLM aircraft, its engines, its landing gear, its lower fuselage, tears through the top of the Pan Am 747 at a closing speed of over 150 miles per hour. It shears off the top of the fuselage like a blade. 4 meters of the Pan Am aircraft simply cease to exist. The KLM 747 continues into the air for a fraction of a second, then settles back onto the runway, on fire, and slides for another 150 meters before coming to rest. Both aircraft are burning. The explosion is visible from Santa Cruz. On the Pan Am aircraft, in the sections of the fuselage that have not been destroyed by the initial impact, there are survivors. People thrown from their seats, people trapped under debris, people who cannot understand what has just happened to them. The aircraft is split open. The roof is gone. Fire moves through the interior with a speed that nobody is prepared for. Purser Dorothy Kelly is one of the Pan Am crew. She is alive. She begins moving through the wreckage, pulling passengers toward the openings in the fuselage, directing people to jump, catching those who fall. She will save lives today simply by refusing to stop moving. People jump from the shattered aircraft onto the runway 8 meters below. Some are injured in the fall, some are already on fire. Those who can walk move away from the burning hulk as fast as they are able. On the KLM aircraft, there are no survivors. The impact and the fire are total. All 248 people aboard, 234 passengers and 14 crew, are gone. Among them, Captain Jacob Veldhuizen van Zanten, who never had the chance to understand what he had done. Emergency services at Los Rodeos are overwhelmed within minutes. The airport has never dealt with anything like this. The fog makes everything harder. The fire makes everything worse. Rescue crews work through the burning wreckage in conditions that are almost impossible to describe. Of the 396 people aboard the Pan Am aircraft, 61 survive. Of the 248 people aboard the KLM aircraft, none do. It is the worst disaster in the history of aviation. It remains so to this day. In the weeks and months that follow, investigators from Spain, the Netherlands, and the United States pick through every piece of evidence they can find. The cockpit voice recorders, the radio transcripts, the radar data, the wreckage itself. What they find is not one mistake. It is never one mistake. It is a chain, each link ordinary on its own, each link connected to the next by a logic that made sense at the time. A bomb in a terminal building on another island, a small airport overwhelmed with diverted traffic, a taxiway that was blocked, forcing aircraft onto the runway, a decision to refuel that added hours to a wait, a fog that arrived at exactly the wrong moment, an airport with no ground radar, a radio transmission that was ambiguous, 2 other transmissions that arrived simultaneously and canceled each other out, a flight engineer who asked the right question and accepted the wrong answer, and at the center of it all, a captain. Van Zanten was not reckless, he was not incompetent, he was not cavalier with the lives in his care. He was, by every available measure, one of the finest pilots of his generation. But he was also a man of enormous authority, operating under pressure, in conditions that made verification almost impossible, surrounded by a crew who would not, who perhaps could not, push back against him. He believed the runway was clear because he needed it to be clear, and nobody stopped him. Tenerife does not just end 583 lives, it changes aviation forever. The phrase Van Zanten's first officer used, "We are now at takeoff," is removed from aviation vocabulary entirely. Specific standardized phraseology becomes mandatory worldwide. There is no room for interpretation. There is no room for ambiguity. Clearance means clearance. Takeoff means takeoff. Nothing else means either. But the deeper change is about authority. For the first time, the industry confronts something it has always known but never formally addressed. that the most dangerous person on a flight deck can sometimes be the most experienced one, that a first officer who is afraid to challenge a captain can be as fatal as a mechanical failure, that the hierarchy of the cockpit, built over decades of aviation culture, can itself become a threat. Crew resource management is born. The idea that every voice in a cockpit matters, that a flight engineer's question deserves a real answer, that a first officer is not just a backup system, they are a check, a balance, a second pair of eyes that must be empowered to say, "Stop, wait, are you sure?" It takes a disaster of this magnitude to make the industry listen. 583 people teach the world how to fly more safely. They do not know they are doing it. They have no say in the matter. But every flight that has departed safely in the decades since, every crew that has caught each other's mistakes, every first officer who has spoken up, every captain who has paused to listen, carries a small, invisible debt to the runway at Los Rodeos.